Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Smith. And if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are tons of instructional videos there. You can find the links below. However, for today, my friends, one of the stories that I oftentimes go back to is meeting some strangers at a brewery and realizing that these two people are just the most amazing people on the planet. And I oftentimes go back to this story because we were also invited to Thanksgiving as well. And I often reflect on this story, and Kendra and I talk about it all the time. And this is one of those folks. And he is a pretty cool dude, objectively, but I wanted to say why I thought he was a cool dude. So my guest today is the writer for the hit comedies Letterkenny and Shorzy, as well as the Trailer Park Boys mobile game, retired recording artist, yet continues to DJ, Trevor Risk. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's nice to talk to you again.
Absolutely. A lot of DMs and a lot of messages, or whenever you've popped up in my mind, I've always wanted to shoot you a message to say, hey, dude, like you're a good fellow. And yeah, so I'm stoked.
It's a good way to do it. My older brother has that. He's like, every time he thinks of one of his friends, he just kind of calls them up and stuff. And it's a good way to do it. I try to do it myself, and you're good for that too. And that's why I like talking with you. Now we get to talk for a long time. This is great.
Yeah, right. And now it's like face to face too, because man, there is so much that gets lost in translation via text. It's all interpretation there.
Yeah. I think that there should be, like, you ever text someone, they ask you how you're doing, and you just write fine with a period. And what you're saying is like, fine, I'm fine. And what it comes across as is fine. There should be some new punctuation, maybe not an emoji, like proper old school punctuation for just meaning that you're fine. Like, we should just co-opt like the semicolon. No one knows what the semicolon is for. No one knows how to use it. The best I've ever heard described it as is like, it's like a big speed bump. I don't know. Like, we should just take the semicolon and just be like, fine, semicolon. Everyone will be like, oh, that guy's doing fine, But now we get to talk to each other. There's all this body language and overtones and stuff. It's perfect.
It's way better, way better. Uh-huh. So have you always been a comedy writer specific? Or how'd you get into what you do?
By vocation, no. Although I tried to be as funny as possible. So I was actually thinking about this the other day because I was on set for Shorzy, and we had this, like, the craft service table, and we had Fun Dip. And for anyone who doesn't know what Fun Dip is, it's like packages of powder with a candy stick, and you lick it and you stick it in there and you eat it like that. And I think someone put it out as a joke. And I was thinking about it because I remember writing back on like a monochrome 286 computer with WordPerfect, like in elementary school, a comedic story about Fun Dip because I thought it was the funniest food. Like, it's not really food. It doesn't qualify as food. But I remember, like, as a kid being like, it's just funny that this exists, And then, in my 20s, and I was, I did writing. I was an editor of a magazine for a very long time, and a music journalist, which used to be a job, not so much anymore, and did some sports writing. And that all came from kind of a comedic place. Of course, stuff in my 20s was super embarrassing and real edgelord stuff. I think that a lot of writers, especially in what used to be sort of cultural criticism, used to just want to take down the biggest thing possible, and so you're sitting there from behind your keyboard, you're 24 years old, and you're like, fuck Arcade Fire, and Arcade Fire doesn't think about you, man. And then nice. But I tried to be funny about it, and but it was definitely growing pains of me trying to be funny and not always landing. It's kind of how stand-ups will say that they bombed on stage, their first several times. I definitely bombed on the page many, many, many times. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like how that sounded, bombed on the page. I like that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this one. Is there a kind of setback that you, or quote unquote setback that you reflect on? You're like, fuck, I'm so glad I got through that.
With writing specifically, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You definitely, pardon the meowing of my cat, by the way. He's terribly vocal and he never shuts up unless he's asleep. He'll go to sleep soon. Um, uh, there's just these times where you overreach, you want to get noticed and you want to say things, you want to go into meetings and things, and you want to be like, this is my stamp, this is my first, this is how people are going to get noticed. And that's just like, it's an instinct we all have. And I remember just so many times where I was overreaching and people like, I would tell it's an obstacle, but I remember like one of my first like pitches for a script was like, comedy usually has an A story and a B story in an episodic television, and sometimes a tiny C story. And I think I had like an A to G story, you know? And people like, yeah, you basically just pitched a feature film, and like, kind of like a Robert Altman film is what you did. And we're just making dick jokes here,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is my masterpiece
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yes, it's a dick joke, Mount Olympus. Climb it with me, listeners.
Yeah.
So I can think of all these different times where I definitely did that, where, I thought, your instinct is you want to get noticed, you want to, it's like a football player gets on the field and, wants to just hit the star player, and it's training camp, and you're like, hey, you're cut because, you don't hit the quarter. Like, Kansas City's in training camp this year and the rookie linebacker hits Patrick Mahomes full force. He's getting cut, but we all have that instinct, right? And I can think of just so many times where I did that with writing and DJing and stuff, and thinking that I was just going to make some sort of name for myself. And now you just gotta just keep making continuously good stuff and put in the work. And those are the people who, find a success with it instead of trying to make a splash. Sometimes you never live down those splashes, right? You get known as the person who did that, your whole life, and to other people who might want to hire you. So,
damn, like really typecasted, or like when you say that, it reminds me of Matthew McConaughey, how he was like a rom-com king, and then he was like, I want to do serious stuff, and it just took a huge break.
yeah, I mean, there's just this interesting period of McConaughey's career too, where like he was making some garbage, right? Because he was in Days Confused. That was his first ever thing. He came up with his catchphrase, all right, all right, all right. And there's like a really bad, like sixth sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where he's like, comes out to a table full of dead people and he's like, all right, all right, all right. And I was like, this guy's trying to make his thing happen, And so the reconnaissance happened and we're all happy for it. And that guy should be allowed to be the crazy Texan that he is. And we should either put him in stuff or not put him in stuff, and not try to put him in things he doesn't belong in,
Fair.
Yeah.
I think this is one of my like really selfish questions that I pondered quite a bit on. And so I find that a majority of creatives, actually, Rick Rubin put it well. He said that a majority of creatives that we lose early, we lose due to the very darkness that curated their creativity. So I find that I'm really interested in your thoughts or your insights if there is a darker side to humor writing.
I just watched this clip of John Mulaney, who's on this whole, PR trip right now about him going to rehab and this kind of thing. And he says, everyone thinks it's very fine to talk about how comedy comes from trauma and psychoanalyze us and this kind of thing. And he makes sort of a dark joke about how he's like, there's tons of people with depression who aren't really good fucking comedy writers. Why don't you go bug them? And it's kind of a funny joke. It was like, no, I tragedy plus time equals comedy. Like, like that's a classic rule. And I am going to pick this guy up because he's annoying me. Sorry, listeners.
That's all good.
This is an orange cat that I have. I love him to death, but when he's
Beautiful.
awake, He's loud. So I think that's true. I mean, I used to like run a very large like live venue, and we used to have a lot of comedy in there. And man, being around stand-ups is really tough. It's not even that, and I don't want to play pop, psychologist here, cocktail party psychology, but it does often come from a place where you're like, okay, well, I haven't had this kind of joy in my life that I think that is natural. And maybe if I commodify it, and darker than that, like weaponize it, I can make this a whole kind of career. It's very common for people to be introduced at a comedy show by someone that like, hey, he's my best friend, he's a great artist, like I want you to, and they hug each other on stage, and when that person gets off stage, that person who introduces them is like smoking, like, the fuck was that? You're terrible. It's not really a supportive community naturally, not in my experience anyway, and it's just anecdotal obviously, but like I think that that's an interesting take on it, that like the darkness that gave them their creativity, we lose them early to that. I mean, it just happened so much in comedy that it's hard to play off as coincidence, uh
Mm-hmm.
it's it's like CTE in football or something. I make a lot of bad sports analogies, so when it's just like, oh yeah, okay, so like suicide is a million times more prevalent in people who have played these aggressive sports and stuff like that. There's got to be a reason for it, and it just, that happens in comedy a lot, and if you think about it, yeah, it could be a bit sort of like intimidating in the idea that, I need to take the joy in my life and I need to, capitalize on it financially. And my reputation is based on it. And people say to you all the time, you're not very funny, or tell me a joke. And you're like, I don't have any jokes in the bag, and hey, you don't get a florist flowers for their birthday. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just want to stare at the Great Canadian Shield in Sudbury and cry a bit about how powerful it is. Those rocks, man, millions of years of those rocks created this place. Think about it, So sure, I mean, it happens. It doesn't happen to everybody. I think it happens more to people in comedy than it would to people who are not, excluding dentists, of course. Dentists, some sort of trauma that I've not explored, but I know that's common.
I believe a air traffic controller as well.
Yeah.
That one I think would be probably, for myself at least, probably the pinnacle of stress. Just like thousands upon thousands of like airplanes coming in and out with a bunch of people on it. Like, that's stressful.
Like, as someone who's neurodivergent, would you call me? I don't know. I have a few different like neurological conditions, and like I feel like we just got to I think I have this theory that most people are in the wrong job, and there's no way to just like put people in jobs without being a totalitarian society. But I saw, who's this comic I saw this autistic comic, it might have been Fern Brady, I can't remember, talk about how like someone found like maybe there's a cure for autism, and she was like, yeah, but what if we need math to solve the world? It's like, what if we need like math to save the world? We can't just like be like, hey, put down the Rubik's Cube for a second, we need to, you know what I mean? So I feel like there's a certain personality type that belongs in the air traffic controller situation, that like not only, I don't want to see makes them happy doing it, but like satisfies them, I know like I live with OCD, and it was just like, oh yeah, there's definitely ways that it frustrates the shit out of me, but there's also things that I've learned to careen it in the direction where I know how to monopolize it. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, I'm always on time, or I'm a good DJ. It's like all about sort of precision and counting and math and that sort of thing, and keeping good tempo. Of course, if I get a stain on my shirt, I have to go home and and throw the shirt away. But like, and just generally life is just in my head all at all times. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. Do you want to keep talking about air traffic controllers, or should
Oh
we?
man, it was all good. I was like, you know what? There's a lot of shenanigans. I really like what you said about most people are in the wrong job. I totally agree with that. And thinking about it, where how often do you even hear someone? I for sure can say that from myself at least that there's been more people that talked about how much they don't like their job than how much they do like their job. And there's like a handful of people that actually say they get joy and fulfillment or something out of it, where it's like a good vibe, not even like a profound fulfillment, just like, yeah, I'm pretty grateful that I get to do this thing.
If I can help it, I try not to work Mondays very much. I'll work Saturdays, I'll work Sundays, but I try not to work Mondays. And a big part of that is that I don't get, the Sunday scary existential dread. And people say that they're like, oh, I've got the Sunday dread, I've got the Sunday scary situation, and they're like, you don't get it. I was like, I don't really work Monday, and they're like, it's not that simple. I'm like, it is that simple. It like that was never a thing before the work week. No one was arbitrarily upset after church a couple hundred years ago. It's a thing that you think, I have to go to work tomorrow. I'm not happy in my job. I'm wasting all this time at it. I'm wasting my life. Right. It's a real simple. I know I said earlier I'm not going to do cocktail party psychology, but here we go.
That's
Um,
cool.
uh, so it's and I asked them like if they have Monday off, like it's like this Monday's a holiday or something. I'd be like, "How you doing today?" "I'm having a great Sunday." I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. I think it's, I would never actually say that. That's too smug. I want everyone to have a nice time all the time. But that's where it comes from. And one of the things I love about living in Montreal for most of the year is that it's an affordable city and it has this overall work-life balance going on. So, for instance, it's not like Toronto where everyone who provides for the upper middle class is working at night, collecting the garbage and making the pastries and stuff like that. Like the guys picked up my garbage this afternoon at like 2 p.m, because at the end of the day, everyone kind of works together, right? And so there's
Mm.
not this pressure to be in a job that you don't want to be in. My local bartender is in his 60s, and that's not uncommon. You know why? Because he's a really good bartender, and not just like good make a drink, like he's just good at like holding court and making sure everyone's happy in there. He's suited for that job. Whereas in a lot of other places in North America, it's like, oh, you're a bartender, what are you trying to do? Like, what else are you trying to do?
Mm.
Oh, you're a waiter, like, what are you trying to like do right here? Whereas like you can make a great living as a waiter in just like a bistro here, right? And so what it does is it attracts people who are just like really good at it. Like you get, and I don't mean like service like you get in like America where everyone's just getting in and asking you how the first few bites are tasting. You know what I mean? Like it's just people who like know you and recognize you, and you tip well, and they just know how to do it, and they like being around people, and they like the hospitality industry, and that's such an awesome thing to be around.
Mm.
It's not obviously perfect in the city. There's a million things I don't like about it, but one of the things I do like about that is it seems like there's a higher level of percentage of people who are in the jobs that suit them instead of the jobs that is just a necessity because of cost of living and things like that. Also, the European influence here, you get a lot of that. It's like, oh, what do you do? I work at a coffee shop. Like, oh, that's great. Like I love coffee. I
Yeah.
like working with coffee. I'm a morning person, right? It's not so much a transitional job. You meet people in, I used to live in Vancouver, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to move to Europe," and I'm like, "What are you going to do?" They're like, "I'm just going to get a job in a coffee shop." I'm like, "No, the people in the coffee shop there have been working there 30 years. you
Yeah.
know, like that's their vocation because they pay a real wage stuff too. Like that, there's part of that involved as well. But yeah, seeing people in the jobs that they should be in gives me this just great satisfaction. I love it. It's not easy to do. Obviously, you can't just wave a magic wand and get the job you want, do whatever, or even know the job you should be in, right? But and pardon the rant here, but on the flip side of that, I think that a job has to be a job. I know that like on Letterkenny, we have a saying that's like a colloquial aphorism that's like, if you'll never work a day in your life if you find something like that, that old idiom.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, everyone hates their job a little bit, you know. And so you're like, hey, the one thing I'm passionate about, I work in. I'm like, that's great. And they're like, Now I'm not passionate about anything because
Mm-hmm.
that's become a job, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. That, which happened to me with music. I worked in every job in the music industry, and it got to a certain point where I would hear a piece of music I liked and I would think, can I commodify it? Can I publish it? Can I write about it? Can I cover it in my band? Can I DJ it? Do they have representation yet? All these kind of things that I was doing in it. And I realized I wasn't just sitting down and enjoying music. And what a thing to not have in your life, not enjoying a piece of music.
Yeah. Yeah. Shit. That's crazy. And that's definitely not, yeah, that is true though. Because I think it takes away the novelty of it. There's the obligation of it. You're not there to be present with the activity or whatever you're doing. You're just kind of, you're not able to lose yourself in it as easily. And
Yeah.
when we can't lose ourselves in it, then damn, that sucks.
I still catch myself doing that. I'll like hear a song and I'll be like, oh, is it uncool to like this song? And I'm like, motherfucker, you're 40, like you're not trying to keep up a reputation as a cool musician or anything like that. Just like put on that song. Who cares? Let it rip.
What's a song that just flows through you that you just feel it top to bottom and you're like, damn, fucking love that song.
One of my favorite songs of all time, is that what you're asking me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, The Payback by James Brown. That's a perfect song. That's 7 minutes of a perfect song. I have a friend who's DJing a wedding for the first time, and I've only DJed 2 weddings in my life, and it's a nightmare. Because you're like, first off, there's the pressure of ruining two people's most special day by one mistake. You have like weird old uncles from Penticton yelling at you about Dire Straits, and you have like 20 somethings from the city who want to hear Drake, and you have like 15-year-olds who just want to watch a YouTube unboxing video or something. And there's nothing in between any of that. And so you're like, you can't make everybody happy. Someone's going to be yelling at you. And if you make one mistake, the bride and groom are going to be like, yeah, my wedding was great, except the DJ was awful. And so what I told her when she's going to play this wedding, I was like, just play James Brown and work out. Like, if you like oldies and you like him, if you like rock and roll, you like him. If you like hip hop, you like him. If you like house music, you also still like him. It's James Brown. And I'm like, there's this James Brown like rubric, and you start with James Brown, and then you like you dance a little over here, and you're like, what about like KC and the Sunshine Band or something? You're like, oh, they didn't like that. I'll go back to James Brown, and then you're like, I'll go a little over here. Oh, that's good. Well, I can branch out from here. They didn't like that. I'll go back here. And like, just make James Brown your starting point. So I interviewed this DJ from New York years and years ago. His name was Jazzy J. He's one of like the inventors of hip hop. And we were talking about, like, he was like, what song are you hearing on the way up to heaven? We were talking about that. And he was like, what song is getting played while you're getting the tour? And I'm like, oh, The Payback. He's like, you just gonna rock around bumping butts with people, slapping fives with God, listen to The Payback? I'm like, I can't think of a better song.
That is a good way to go out. You just like freaking Spartan kick a door open and that's your song. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's my entry music and my
Yeah.
exit music.
Yeah.
100%.
Yes. Yeah. For the wrestling match. That's your
Yeah.
song. Yeah. It makes
It's my
total
batting
sense.
walk-up song. It's my
Yeah.
wrestling entry song. It's a song you play on my deathbed. That's fine. That's great.
Yeah. It's a song that you have playing when there's no songs playing.
Yeah. If I don't know what to put on, that's James Brown.
There you
Anytime
go.
I got stuck DJing anywhere, I'd just be like, James Brown. Everyone's like, yeah, James Brown. Like, I'm like, great. Everyone's happy. You know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So was when what for writing, I suppose, when did you want to make a career? Was there something like in your younger days that I could know or learn of you that influenced the person that I see today?
I had, I didn't go to school past, I didn't go to school past high school. But I'm old enough and come from Ontario. And so we had like grade 13. It was weird, man. We had like 20-year-olds in our high school. Like it was very odd. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. And so, a lot of the class people just be like, oh yeah, I saw the teachers at the bar this weekend. And, tiny little town like Letterkenny. And you get to a point where the younger teachers come in, they're not that much older than you. And they're like, listen, like, I'm not here to like turn the lights off and on if you're talking too much. Just like, let's talk about books, what kind of books would you like? And like, let's make a curriculum around this. I was an English student, like a lot of lot of English, like a couple of English courses every semester about writing and reading and stuff like that. And I had some influential teachers. I had in high school, I had a very young, kind of hip teacher who was like into me, like writing about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And then I had like the teacher that everyone loved her because she was a hip, cool young teacher. And then had like the stuffy older teacher in the pantsuit who nobody liked, but I loved. She was the one who gave me all the really interesting cultural stuff like Neil Postman and Hal Nitzeki and stuff like that. And I had them at the same time. And it was funny because everyone's like loved the younger one and hated the older one. And they both sort of gave me this sort of understanding of the duplicity of the words, obviously, where, one would let me go off about, like be sort of this radical left-leaning teenager who just wanted to listen to songs with swear words in it and stuff, and the other one wanted me to like hone my writing skills. I had a teacher in this is a better story maybe. I had a teacher in the 8th grade, the last year before high school when I was growing up, and he used to do this thing where every time you did something bad, he would get you to write a 1-page plan about it. And so he would just be like, Mr. Risk. And he would I would be leaning back in my chair, on the 2 legs of the chair. You're like, Mr. Risk, I think you can write me a 1-page plan tonight about why we don't lean on chairs this way, the structural integrity, whatever you want to take it. And it was just writing exercises. And I didn't realize that he thought I was a good writer. And at the last day of school, instead of like watching movies or whatever did, he read all of the plans from the entire year. And we had no idea who was going to do it. And he read them to the class. And 4 out of 5 of them were mine. And they were getting big laughs. And I didn't think I was that funny. I was just like, I gotta fill this fucking page. And I'm like, about a chair, I don't know. And I was like, the history of the chair is a very interesting one. It goes back to the very long ago times of the 1940s, just bullshit to fill the page. And it got to the point where every time he would say who the next plan was reading at the last day of school, he'd be like, Mr. Risk. The class would cheer. And I think, his name was Mr. Bob Bridges. And I think that was probably the first moment where I was like, oh shit, like I could maybe, this is not a hard and easy thing to get into, but as a vocation or anything like that. But it's fun. It's fun to even have an audience of 30 great 8th graders when you're in 8th grade. I don't know if I could do that today, but when you're in 8th grade, make it, and I was not a popular kid. It was the only time I remember people being like, awesome. Like this was they getting cheers and attention, whatever. And I think he did it on purpose, looking back years ago. It was great. He just read all of my dumb stuff, including one I paid my brother $5 to write for me.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
You probably really proofread your brother's, or probably not. You probably just went blind. You're like, screw it.
I just handed it in. Yeah. And he taught my brother too. So he knew it was great. So
that's a really cool story. That's a cool origin story.
Yeah. I think that might be my origin story. I think that's the
Super
genesis of me being, page funny. So
you got cut by a 52 slices of paper, and then you were just stuck there. You're just like done.
Yes, radioactive Rolodex bit me, and ever since then, the pen goes down.
Yeah, no, yeah. The pen is the weapon. The pen is the weapon.
This summer, one man, one pen. What's a pen? I don't know. It's fine.
That's sweet. How do you get? Where do you draw creativity from, or do you just have a system, or do you just kind of go with the flow? You're just kind of, do you have a process?
I think that you just got to find material in everything all of the time. Now that gets you in trouble because everything is funny and it can be very tiring to the people around you. But you have to find humor and everything because it's a muscle you got to exercise. When you have a bad day and you didn't write anything and you tried to write something, you're like, oh, I'm out of juice, I'm never going to be funny again. But it's not how it works. It's a muscle and you keep exercising it. So inspiration isn't so much something you go to. You have your little devices, I guess, but it's just you have to find everything can be funny. Now, that doesn't mean you should say it always out loud, because I was realizing recently that I put my foot in my mouth a few times, and you got to realize when not to say these things out loud. I remember I was at a party and the guy was like, "Hey, I'm going back to Winnipeg for Christmas," and I was like, "Try not to get stabbed," and everyone just shut up and put their cups down, and he took his shirt off and he had this huge stab wound across his chest, and I was like, "From Winnipeg, from years ago in Winnipeg."
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not wrong. And I just hear one guy laughing at the other end of the room, like record scratch off the needle, and one guy and it's his brother being like, "Man, he clocked you." Like, you know. Or like I dated
That's
this
good.
woman, this Japanese woman when I was in my 20s, and her dad did not look as old as he did, and he had a very dry sense of humor. And I was meeting him for the first time, and he you know, he would say things, and then I wouldn't laugh, and he'd be like, "That's a joke, young man." And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, funny, I get jokes," you know. And then at one time I was asking him how long he lived in the city for. He's like, "Oh, my life, except when they put us in the camps." And I was like, "Oh fuck no, you were interned. You were interned during the war. Cool, 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 cool." I just laughed about that over lasagna. This is terrific for me. So
Oh shit, that's awesome. Oh
uh
shit.
yeah, so you
Uh,
get in trouble sometimes.
mhm.
I was the other day, Heather, who you met me with, she lives
Mhm.
next door to me now, which is great. um
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, I found her a place just next door. We're going to wrestling tonight.
That's sweet. Well, when Kendra and I come on over, we'll be all, it'll be convenient as fuck. That's for sure.
Very convenient.
Cool.
She had a friend over, and last week and she had mentioned earlier in the night that her dad had died, and like years ago. I was like, great. And well, I didn't say great. Great, your dad died, great, good to know. But it was just in passing. And then later in the night she was talking about her mom, and she was like, "Yeah, she's just living her best life." And I was like, and she was like, "Were you gonna say something?" And I was like, mm. And she's like, "Were you gonna say unlike your dad?" And I was like, "I didn't say that. I'm saying I did not say that." uh so I'm getting a little bit better at keeping that in. uh, uh, as far as inspiration goes, you know, there's, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Grand Budapest Hotel, the
Mhm.
Wes Anderson movie. There's a part at the beginning where the novelist says that there's this idea that novelists pull all these stories from the air and they create, and they're like, no, no, no. Once people find out you're a writer, they have this instinct to want to give you all of their stories, especially if they're older,
Mm.
because they want to be immortalized, you know. And that's the thing, is like, what can we leave behind, what, you know. And so like, there's jokes, I have jokes in Letterkenny that are my grandfather's jokes from the war. We have a bit about how they're like, if you stick a penny up your ass and it comes out green later, it means you're sick. And it's like, well, if you stick pennies up your ass, you're probably sick already. um he did that to, he's like, "Oh, there was this little guy and his trench coat dragged on the ground. He was so short. We told him to stick a penny up his ass, and he came out. He's like, 'I'm not sick, guys.'" They're like, "Oh, you stuck a penny up your ass. Great." uh and these are stories that my grandmother just wants to tell me all the time. Like, he'll
That's
call me up and
awesome.
be like, "All right, so there's these, I'm in Brazil, it's 1955, there are prostitutes everywhere." And my partner, of course, is really into it, but I'm a busy man. I'm loyal to your nana, you know. And so, and when I see his friends, oh my god, his friends in their 90s too, they're like, "You're a writer, sit down." And I'm like, "Okay, here's 8 hours that I'm just going to listen to you," and it's great. Like, I love that. I've always liked
Mhm.
that. It's always been something I've enjoyed. I used to sit when I was a kid next to him on the couch and just listen to him talk forever and ever and ever
Mhm.
and ever. So um I like that. I love when people want to give me their stories. It makes me happy. But that's where it, like, so inspiration, like, there's little things where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this because it's not working today or something. Like, but they're just little devices. Inspiration is just, you just try to find the humor in everything, and there absolutely is. And sometimes you write down little bits, and sometimes you just commit them to memory and say them, and then you're like, "Where did that joke come from?" And they're like, I'm like, "I don't know, like 15 years ago I knew a guy who used to say that." Right? Like, one of the catchphrases in Letterkenny is "pitter patter, let's get at her." And I think Jared's like hockey coach when he was 9 used to say that. I think that's where that comes from. So
Nice.
yeah, it's just, it's around. You just gotta change the way you're looking at stuff. And like, again, I said, like, it's very annoying for people who are very close to you. They, you know, they're like, this is not a funny situation. And you're like, I mean, it could be. Like Mel Brooks is, you know, the greatest Jewish comic of all time, and he does dress up as Hitler and rap as Hitler, called the Hitler rap. I mean, if he can do that, and that doesn't mean everyone should try to be some edgelord racial humor. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but like that's the thing. People say there's this war on comedy. You can't say anything right now. I'm like, man, Taika Waititi made a movie about a little kid whose best friend was like imaginary Hitler, and it was not problematic. So maybe just like be a bit more progressive. You know, there's just ways to find. There is ways. Everything is funny if it's funny. You just not
Totally.
being funny. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
On the
like,
note,
okay, racial humor. I had a friend of mine, a black comic, like a comic who happens to be a black gentleman. He was like, he's like, racial humor. It's funny. It brings us together. It's funny when you and I talk about this stuff. He's like, racist humor, not funny. It separates us. It's gross. I'm like, right. And I didn't know the difference. And then I saw someone do the latter once, and I was like, yeah, that's not funny. That's just racist. So there's fun. There's humor in everything. That's the thing.
totally.
Inspiration is just, it's there. It's everything. That's the idea.
Cool. On the note of humor, I have a bucket list item.
Uh-huh.
And that bucket list item is to do an open mic night stand-up. Don't do it? Or
No,
do you have any tips, any tricks, any writing, any communication, speaking?
Stand-up is the hardest thing.
Perfect. Honestly,
It's
I
like,
don't want to do it. It's just because it's very uncomfortable.
yeah. Yeah, the hard things, the right things can be the same thing sometimes, obviously. You know.
It would be a one and done.
Yeah. Well, who knows? The thing about it is that it's the hardest thing. It's like, imagine it's like one person versus an entire audience. It doesn't matter what they look like or who they are or what they're wearing, anything like this. And they can do it if they can do it. But it's one versus a lot. It's like, imagine if you were DJing and that week you had to write all of the songs you were playing that night. You couldn't just play like a Pharrell song or something, or like some new hot jam. Like, you had to be like, and I wrote all the songs. Like,
Holy shit.
not,
Okay. Yeah, that's
they're not
cool.
going to pay you. It's the hardest thing. I think it's the hardest thing in entertainment,
Hmm.
um, to do, next to being a professional wrestler. But I think that so
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing. And so yeah, if you want to do it, do it. I mean, like, hell, if you want to workshop it, let's workshop it. I think that everyone thinks they can do it also. And that's another thing. I've been to open mics with people, and I know people who are so funny. And I, like, my best friend, like, opened for Amy Schumer a bunch of times, and like was trained at the UCB theater, and he's incredibly funny. He's funnier than me. And uh he I saw him at the beginning, and there were things where we were like, this is gonna kill. And then he got up there and it just did not at all. And I'm used to that. I remember that DJing was just like, every time I played, if I could play a wrong song, I could just get fired and not have a job anymore. It was a lot of pressure, but I didn't have to write that song. I could
That's
be like, it's
cool.
not my fault. That's MIA's fault. Her new song sucks, you know? Um, and but everyone's like, no, you suck. You delivered it wrong. You wrote it wrong. We all paid to be here. And it's like, oh man, it's hard not to get down on yourself about it. But I love this for you. I know you're the type of guy who, like, will try the things that are tough, right? That's who
That's
you
fair.
have you been that way your whole life?
No, there was a solid chunk of time where I was just a little biatch. Yeah.
Well, at least you weren't a big biatch, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Just
I've
a
known a
little
few
one.
big biatches in my
Yeah.
day. They're way worse. A little biatch I can deal with.
Right. I think it's become I've become a lot more chill recently, like just over time. Like even since we met, like even more chill, but more direct.
Yeah.
So I find that with the organization of my thoughts, it's just a lot more streamlined, and there's less conceptual thinking that's pulling me back or pulling me down.
Well, how old are you?
33.
33. So yeah, it's one of these things that, like, we always make jokes about, like, the midlife crisis for a man. Ah, he's gonna buy a Miata. he's gonna he's gonna get hair plugs, something like this. Just like, yeah, in a very acute way, it is a midlife crisis. In another way, it's a midlife trauma, and it's not about getting old, it's not about vanity, it's about that. I think that every man I've known has just gotten to this point where they hit something and they have to just like pivot, and it takes a lot out of you and it makes you a lot calmer. I went through mine a few years ago, and everyone that I've met since then is just like, oh, I like Trevor. He's a calm guy. I've seen him like things don't seem to bother him so much. And uh anyone who knew me beforehand would be like, that no, we're talking about a different person. Yeah, you're not, that's not the Trevor I know.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's not always, it's just like, hey, I'm out the other side and it didn't kill me, it made me stronger. It's like, actually, you're just fucking exhausted. Like,
Yeah. You're
you
just dragging your ass for a solid chunk of time, and now you're finally getting out. Like,
Yep.
chillax. Yeah.
You got taken down to nothing. You saw God or whatever it is you believe in, and you were just like, well, it's one way or the other way, I guess, here. And you're just like, okay, maybe this doesn't really matter anymore. And it's funny, in the last few years of my life, I've almost like died a few times. I mean, I say that in an exaggerated way, but if you put it all together, there's a lot of stuff just like, yeah, you barely missed like a tornado destroyed my neighborhood that I was living in and like killed a bunch of people. I might like to flatten like my neighborhood, like a building exploded down the street from me. I got fucked up with COVID before there was a vaccine while living in Albania. I got tear gassed, earthquake. Like I was in uh the Balkans a couple months ago, and the thunder was so bad that I woke up and I thought they were bombs, because the Serbs are kind of rattling the saber a little bit lately. And I was like, we're getting bombed. And I wasn't like, oh my God, run for cover, we're all gonna die. I was just like, my girlfriend hates bombs. I hope I gotta make sure she's okay. Like, and when the tornado happened, I was like, what if I like go out and like yell at the sky like the priest in Caddyshack? That's gonna be a funny bit, right? Like, no, Trevor, like a U-Haul bigger than your house just flew by.
Nice.
So yes,
Yeah,
the
I like
calming.
that.
There's the calming with age. I think it happens in my experience and the people I experience, including yourself around me. I see it happening as more of a plateau instead of a dulling. With age, I think you go through something jarring, and then you're like, shit, I'm worrying about stuff that doesn't matter. So I'm cool.
And then everything else just like chillaxes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. I think that's like the I think it's like the ticket to enjoying life is you have to go through a shitstorm, or a literal storm in your case, I guess. I don't know.
That's true. That's funny. I think you can do stand up. Yeah, I think that like I had this idea that like life just teaches you the same lesson over and over again until you learn it, and each time you don't, it makes it a harder lesson to learn until you're finally just like about to die, and it's like, are you gonna learn? Like, yes, I'm gonna learn this lesson. Thank you. I'm gonna learn these lessons, and I'm going to bridge out. I'm gonna get rid of that and become a better person.
I look at that as like there's the feather, the stone, and then the truck.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be whispering, and it's going to be a feather. It's going to be light. It's going to be more thoughts.
Yeah.
We're not going to listen. We get some rocks thrown at us. For whatever reason, we don't listen at that point, and then we get hit by a truck. I don't know. I've gotten into a car accident, but I've never been hit by a truck. But even then, like, yeah, those are like the three little sequences where listening quite a bit more to the feathers.
Yes, it's important to listen to the feathers. I like these little devices. I've learned them in therapy. Listen to the feathers is a good one. I had a good therapist, excuse me, teach me. They're like, listen, if you've been walking the wrong way for a while, you've been walking, and it's like when you make a city, it's just all grass, and then you walk on it, make it a path, and then you lay stones down, and then you pave it. Eventually it becomes this 4-lane highway, and you're going really fast on it, and you have to start walking on the grass again because you're going the wrong way really, really fast. And so you got to go off the highway in a place that's going to be full of weeds and like cut your way through, and you got to walk on it. It's going to suck at first, and it's going to become a path. It's dirt, and then you can start paving it, but you got to walk, and you're going to be just going slowly, so it's going to be frustrating. Walk on the grass. So my listen to the feathers is, maybe I should walk on the grass on this one. Go the other way. It's going to suck for a while. It's going to feel completely unnatural. But I've been just tuned, and I gotta retune my brain to start thinking that that's, the proper, smarter way to go. Anyway,
Awesome.
that's one of my devices. Feathers, I'm going to steal that though. I'm going to listen to the feathers a little more.
Yeah. Just the tickle. Just the tickle.
Just a little tickle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, Well, my man, we're at the top of the hour, and I want to make sure that you're on time to your wrestling match. So is there anything that I did not ask you about that you want to like just talk about?
No, I mean, I'm definitely one of these people who I'm an, infovore, I guess they call it, where if you want to talk about for hours, history, music, movies, television, politics, sports, watches, records, fashion, I will talk to you about it. So when you ask me that, I'm like, well, we could talk for the next 9 hours about it if you want to,
Just get some coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Just settle down, brew a pot, and that's a whole other podcast though. So I don't think I have anything. I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure what to expect but this is just a nice conversation with my friend Kyle.
Yeah, man. I like to keep things very conversational. I actually have it on I say this almost every podcast, but on my whiteboard it says good vibes make for great guests.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you're a good host.
Oh, thank you, my man. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have 2 questions that I do end the podcast with.
I like that consistency.
Yeah, it's like a bookend. It helps me out. So the first one's dark, but I think it's going to be a good one. And I have a sense that you probably pondered it before. But to set the stage, you're on your deathbed. It's at the end of your days. It's going to be really lighthearted. You're surrounded by the people that you care for. What is your piece of advice that you want to pass on?
Piece of advice. I got a good piece of advice once that helpful. It's a little long-winded. It's not like epitaph. It won't fit on a gravestone, but it's like, do whatever you want as long as it's not abusive. And people don't really realize that that's a good idea. They get in certain situations and relationships, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna go play video games. Like, I wish you wouldn't play video games. Okay, but they're not hurting anybody. If you become addicted to video games and spending all your money on it or something like that, sure. But it's like, do whatever you want as long as it's not abusive. And if anyone tells you not to do those things that are bringing you joy, they might be being a little abusive. You know what I mean? Like, do the things that make you happy, and as long as it's not hurting anybody, just do them. Because you attract the people you should be around doing that, and you push away the people that you shouldn't be around. If you're really into going to Buffy the Vampire Slayer conventions and the people in your life think it's stupid and are mean to you about it, they're being awful. Because, man, go to that Buffy convention and meet the guy who played the principal on it, and get his autograph and on your leg, and then tattoo that autograph because you love it. Like, who cares? Like, that's great. You love that, this is fine. And then you meet other people who are like that, and that's how you meet like your best friends for life, is at this Buffy convention. Do that. People don't do that. And it sounded so stupid. It was like almost like a golden rule of do unto others, they do unto you. It was like, oh yeah, that's so obvious and trite that I feel dumb for not doing that. I think that's a key to not feeling that existential dread we're talking about. I feel like you don't think you're wasting your life if you're doing that. Oh, like, hey, well, I don't want to go to the farmer's market. Be like, okay, I'll go to the farmer's market. Be like, man, go to the farmer's market if you want to go to the farmer's market. Like, or if the person's like, why don't you come to the farmer's market? Hang out with people who like to go to the farmer's market. It's fine. They don't have to be your everything, but like, not everyone is going to be your everything. So have your farmer's market friends, and have your Buffy convention friends, and have your sports friends, and just do the thing that, as long as it's not hurting anybody, just do it. Just keep doing it, and you'll naturally just lead a better life. That's so long-winded. You wanted a 3-word answer, but like, that's what I gave you.
No, man, I think that was great. I honestly, I see that fitting on a gravestone for sure, without a doubt in my mind. Without a doubt in my mind. So
my gravestone is going to say, Trevor Risk hated cliches, and also he marched to the beat of his own drum. That's what it's going to say.
Yeah, exactly. And for my final question, my friend, the very best version of you is sitting next to you right now and is giving you a piece of advice for this season of your life. What is that piece of advice?
See, you said that. My cat is sitting next to me right now, and he's an orange cat, so he's not very smart. I love him to death. But the best version of me is going to give me advice for this season in my life. And what is he saying right now? He's probably saying you could get more writing done if you stopped reading about pro football as much as you do. I know. I think it might be that simpler. It's like maybe you don't need to spend that long, reading about, the Minnesota Vikings depth at wide receiver for the upcoming season. That's not. Maybe I should write more and read that less.
Yes.
Yeah, I know
Awesome.
too much about it, and it's got to the point where I'm like, I have no one to talk to about it. So you talk to internet strangers on like Reddit about it or whatever, and you're like, oh, you people are terrible. And you're like, oh shit, I'm one of them. Like, I don't know. Like is
holy shit, this became a cult real fast.
It's like that old joke of that guy in the strip club who's like, look at that loser over there. I see him every single night. That's me, just like, oh, these guys are too into the knowing about the air raid offense, and you're like, man, I know about the air raid.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome, dude. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, folks, that is all that I've got for today's episode. Trevor, my man, where can people find you? Or do you want people to find you?
Oh, yeah, sure. Find me anywhere someone's talking about football. No,
yeah.
I have a Twitter that they just took my blue check mark away from, which is great. But I try to use that less and less. I also don't connect with people so much on there as I connect with like bots that are just showing me every scene from every Night Court episode or something. I don't know. I'm on Instagram. I don't dick around on that too much either. But if you like someone sharing cheesecake photos of Jane Seymour every day, you should follow me at risk_youth, at risk youth. That's kind of a pun.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how can you get any better than that, man?
I don't know, but I'm not trying.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, folks, that's what I've got for today's episode. Please do me a favor right now. Share it on your Instagram stories and tag me with the handle at DabberDudeKyle, along with Risk. What was your handle again?
At Risk Youth.
At Risk Youth. Thank you. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, be kind. And I hope your day treats you as good as you look. Until next time.